fastest in its class.
And a little bit fancy.
A type of boat that the world has never seen.
Take care.
Gun.
This program is rated adults only.
Violence that may disturb and language which may offend some people.
An extraordinary drama has been played out in the icy waters of the Antarctic.
New Zealander Pete Bethune has boarded a Japanese whaling ship under cover of darkness and attempted to arrest the captain for the attempted
The
murder.
new vessel, dubbed the Bat Boat, has been active in the Southern Ocean, harassing the harpooning ships. The crew beamed a green laser at the whalers as the Japanese fought back with sonar guns.
Earthrace was a 24-metre long wave-piercing trimaran, originally built for the purpose of setting a world record circumnavigating the globe using only renewable energy. The vessel was powered by a combination of biofuels and solar panels and was equipped with state-of-the-art navigation and communication systems. The project was the brainchild of Pete Bethune, a New Zealand-based conservationist who wanted to raise awareness about the potential of renewable energy. After the project was funded through Pete himself, a combination of sponsorships and private donations, Pete formed a team of engineers and technicians to help design and build the vessel. I contacted Pete and he kindly agreed to a phone interview with me.
I was not a boat person. I wanted to build this very cool boat to set a record to go around the globe. And I wanted it to look amazing. You know, the idea was to promote biodiesel, to have biodiesel get in it, shed in a positive light, put an amazing boat out there and do something extraordinary with it.
The boat was designed by Lamotion Design and built by Calibre Boats in Auckland, New Zealand. The vessel was fully submersible and able to cut through 15-metre waves with the ability to go 7 metres underwater. The hull was composed of a composite carbon fibre and Kevlar.
To do around the globe, you are going to get storms. And so I realised early on, one of the keys was it had to be a wave-piercer boat. That led me to discover Craig Loon, who at the time was one of the leading designers of wave-piercing vessels. But when I went to him, you know, Craig would say to me, he says, what do you want on the boat? I was like, I don't, I need a steering wheel and some gears and, you figure it out.
The Earthrace was powered by two 530 horsepower engines that used a mix of animal fat and vegetable oil biodiesel. Biodiesel is a form of diesel fuel derived from plants or animals. It's a renewable, biodegradable fuel manufactured domestically from vegetable oils, animal fats, or recycled restaurant grease. It could be powered by diesel, biodiesel, or a blend of both, with a top speed of 40 knots or roughly 75 kilometers per hour. Pete was so dedicated to the cause that he even underwent liposuction surgery to prove his own body fat could be used.
An Auckland sailor has undergone liposuction to prove his own body fat can be used to help power a trimaran around the world. Peter Bethune's body fat will be converted into biofuel.
If it's a fat or an organic fat, organic oil, you can make biodiesel from it. And so I thought about doing something to sort of highlight this. And so there was a surgeon in Auckland who I went and approached. He said, look, mate, it'll be quite a laugh. I'll do it for free for you. So what I did is I went and had the liposuction, and I took a cameraman in with me. So he filmed it and took some photos or whatever. Although I wasn't involved much in media those days, I knew this is so out there that media's got to go following this. I wasn't the guy who built the most amazing boat in the world. I was a guy who underwent fucking liposuction and had fat sucked down and running the boat on.
After more than 14,000 paid hours of labour and thousands of volunteer hours into the vessel's construction, the ship was launched on the 22nd of February 2006 out of Auckland. After the Earthrace was successfully built, Pete almost immediately took it for a promotional tour around New Zealand and fundraising for the next few months. The extra money was needed to finish the interior of the ship and pay off some of Pete's debts, as it wasn't quite fit for the record attempt just yet. Pete eventually assembled a crew with his sights set on the world record. At 24,000 nautical miles, it's the world's longest race. He just needed to beat the standing record of 75 days set by the British boat Cable and Wireless in 1998. After departing from Auckland across the Pacific with a skeleton crew and very limited monetary resources, they set out on a desperate North American fundraising tour before the record attempt.
It's a boat that's been built to attempt the round the world speed record.
Slow your accent down for me. Okay, tell me again, what is biodiesel?
A renewable fuel that's made normally from vegetable oils, but you can make it
Would
from
you please
animal
slow
fats
your
and fish
accent
oils
down?
and a whole range of things.
Slow your accent down for me. Okay, tell me again.
Pete had, at the stage, put more than $1 million into Earthrace, all he and his wife's funds. It proved difficult finding highly skilled people to work for free for months at a time in truly miserable conditions. The inside was cluttered, there was no air conditioning, no amenities, and the beds even overlapped on each other.
I had to be pretty careful on the crew selection, and that it was, you know, people say, yeah, I'm really tough and I don't get seasick. You put them in Earthrace, man, you put them in big seas, and there's not a lot of people who can tolerate that. And so and the crew can only give up so much of their life. Like, these are volunteers who are unpaid. And the longest serving guy I had, I think, was John Allen, who was my operations manager. He was with me over 2 years. For someone to work for free for 2 entire years, like, that is a big ask. And
after securing a few crucial sponsors, the Earthrace finally had the capacity to set out on the world record attempt from Barbados on the 10th of March 2007. Their intended route was set to begin from Barbados, then to Panama, then Acapulco, San Diego, Hawaii, Majuro, Koror, Singapore, Cochin, Salalah, Suez Canal, Spain, the Canary Islands, and finally back to Barbados. A small crew of just 4 consisted of Pete as the captain, registered navigator and cameraman Ryan Heron, engineer Anthony DiStefano, and medical doctor David Stark. It was smooth sailing at the beginning, however it wouldn't take long for the first major problem to reveal itself to the crew. From the first leg from Barbados to Panama, its new state-of-the-art carbon fibre propellers partially disintegrated, causing a crucial delay of 2 days.
yeah, first attempt, very difficult. Within 500 miles of starting the record attempt, we had these fabulous propellers starting to come to bits.
After passing through the Panama Canal, late that night off the coast of Guatemala, the Earthrace collided with a Guatemalan fishing vessel with 3 fishermen on board. Chaos ensued. In the pitch black water, 2 men were pulled on board the Earthrace by Earthrace crew. However, the Guatemalan skipper was missing. While Dr. Stark was treating the 2 men on board, who were badly injured, the Earthrace circled the location of the collision, desperately hoping to locate the missing skipper. After a few hours swimming and circling the area, scanning it with spotlights, the rescue attempt was abandoned. They set out towards the coast with the 2 badly injured men. It's believed that the fishing boat was drifting in the pitch black with their lights off, and that the Earthrace had failed to detect it. Officials seized the Earthrace after Guatemalan military personnel boarded the boat and informed the crew that they were to accompany them without question. The missing fisherman was tragically presumed dead shortly afterwards.
You know, and I can understand, look, you know, guys dead. Like, they were in a boat with no lights on in international waters. So, but beside that, you know, there's a grieving family, and you know, if we hadn't been in those waters, you know, the situation would have been quite different. So, and they put me under armed guard. So as a captain, I'm responsible. My guy who was driving the boat, I flew him out the following day, and he wasn't dealing with the situation very well. So I thought, you know, he's not under arrest. Let's get rid of him and put him out of the situation. So, you know, in some ways, it's for the betterment for you that we're going to keep you under guard here. He said there is some problems in town. Some people don't like you. The fact that this has happened. So they put me under armed guard. But there's a couple of things I didn't like. It's like this 18-year-old kid with an AK-47 with the safety off and pointing this thing at me.
Pete hired a lawyer and met with the family of the fisherman who was killed. Appearing in court, Pete, as the captain, was charged by the Guatemalan government with negligence. He faced a sentence of up to 10 years in prison if convicted.
I mean, day 8 or 9, the commander calls me in his office and he says, you have friends in high places. And I was like, oh, what do you mean by that? And he said, I got a call from the president today. He's heard about your case and he said he wants it expedited. And he said, you can have free reign to travel around as Guatemala as long as you commit to coming back for a court case, which the president has said will be on Tuesday next week or something like that. And then when we got back to Puerto Quetzal, there was the court case was held. And yeah, effectively the end result was that they deemed it was an accident.
After intervention from the president of Guatemala, and after 10 days held in custody, at the conclusion of the hearing, Pete was cleared of all charges and a settlement was paid to the families of the fishermen from insurance money. After being issued with a clearance from officials and absolved of any potential criminal liability, the remaining crew were free to leave Guatemala. With a reshuffled team, the Earthrace set back out on its journey for the world record. They had some serious ground to cover. After a nightmare of mechanical issues and lengthy servicing, the Earthrace finally made it to San Diego. Because they were lagging so far behind the cable and wireless record, after the numerous mechanical issues and the collision in Guatemala, the decision was made that the Earthrace would start fresh and begin the attempt from San Diego. Starting again, the Earthrace departed from San Diego on the 7th of April 2007 to Hawaii with no major issues, even though securing the biodiesel on each leg proved to be a logistical nightmare. They even had to fall back on conventional diesel once they arrived in Palau. To make matters worse, their engineer would abandon the attempt in Palau. After a desperate media campaign, the Earthrace crew managed to secure a new engineer. After leaving Palau and stopping off in Singapore, that engineer who recently joined them ditched the boat after how much he despised the Earthrace and the working conditions, the fourth engineer to abandon the Earthrace. After passing through Cochin, India, suffering serious delays in the biodiesel tanker, the controversial attempt to circumnavigate the world was finally abandoned in Spain. The attempt could not be continued as repairs on a large crack in the hull couldn't be completed in time, and the threat of the hurricane season was deemed too risky. The disastrous attempt was cancelled on the 31st of May 2007.
For us to do a proper repair on it, we needed to pull the boat out of the water. And to do that, we were probably going to lose another 3 or 4 days. And with that, it would be impossible for us to get the record with that amount of lost time. On top of that, both engines had started to blow smoke. And when I put it all together, I decided to call it off. And it was, it's quite heartbreaking. You put your life and soul into something. But I remember looking at the team. We were sitting around, we were all sitting on the dock in Malaga in Spain, and the team was broken.
One year later, on the 27th of April 2008, after repairs and a substantial refitting, a second attempt at the record began, this time starting out of Sagunto, Spain. The crew consisted of Peter's skipper, navigator Adam Carlson, cameraman Rob Druitt, and engineer Mark Russell. No one except Pete had returned for the second attempt. A last-minute fundraising drive pitched to sell a guest seat in the Earthrace for the attempt, which sold to a woman named Lisa, who would accompany the crew.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm probably psychotic, I think, actually.
By now, the cost of the Earthrace had exceeded $2.5 million, and Pete had taken on crippling debt. This time, luckily for the new Earthrace crew, the second attempt was far more promising. They sailed to Azores, Puerto Rico, Panama Canal, Manzanillo, San Diego, Hawaii, Majuro, Koror, Singapore, Cochin, Salalah, Suez Canal, before finally crossing the finish line back in Spain, claiming the world record in 60 days, 23 hours and 49 minutes on June the 27th, 2008.
Roger, team, we are on the way. Here we go, boys! Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You know, 4 to 5 years of my life to finally get that record was pretty special. And it was, you know, I was a captain of the boat and I'd led the project, but it was an amazing team. In many ways, though, I think the second team was the equal of the first. We had a little more luck on the second attempt, and I think maybe on the first attempt, I wasn't as good as I should have been, most probably looking back. In many ways, the first record attempt and the second record attempt, there was a lot of similarities in terms of problems. Like the second record attempt, we had a shitload of problems in that, but I think as a team, we did a much better job in managing them. And I think my decision making was a little bit better in the second record attempt, and we were definitely better funded in the second record attempt. And you know that when you're trying to set a record, you need to have a backstop. Like I remember when we were in India, we had no money. Like on the first record attempt, we arrived in India with nothing.
The guest crew member Lisa was violently ill from the rough seas and struggled with the miserable conditions on board the Earthrace. She abandoned the journey just 3 days in.
What kind of impact did it have on the world for raising the awareness of biofuels after you'd got the world record?
That is a good question. It definitely had a positive impact. Like it was the most photographed boat for something like 3 years. It was the most photographed boat on the planet. It got on, I don't know how many news items. We were very good at hustling media. Like the fact that it was a very photogenic boat. We had a good story to tell. We were visiting all these ports. We visited 186 ports over 3 years. When you add up in totality how much media and exposure we generated for biodiesel, it contributed significantly. You know, we got on all the major news networks, and so to quantify it, I can't, but it was a significant media event.
After crossing the finish line, Pete told journalists he was to go home to New Zealand to settle down and spend time with his family. However, that would not be the case. He returned to New Zealand after the world record, still in crippling debt. His inability to pay it back necessitated the reluctant sale of the Earthrace. It was decided that the next stage for the Earthrace would be to accompany Sea Shepherd in its 2009-10 operations, named Waltzing Matilda, against Japanese whaling.
She said, "Hey Pete, you know, you've got the record now. What's on the table?" And off the cuff, I said, "Oh, I might go down and hassle those Japanese whalers in Antarctica." And it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. What happened after that, and the only reason I said that, one of my crew had season 1 of Whale Wars, which was a television show that followed the efforts of Sea Shepherd in Antarctica. but I wasn't really seriously thinking about it, but it was sort of in the back of my mind. There was that question, what do I want to do? But I wasn't, really thinking about it too hard. But what happened then, it started this online conversations. Hey, there's this guy, Pete, who's got a super fast boat. And the problem Sea Shepherd had in those days is their boats were way too slow to keep up with the harpoon vessels and stuff. So eventually, when we were touring New Zealand, I got a call from Sea Shepherd and they said, we want to meet and talk about you going to Antarctica with us. So I flew to Friday Harbour, met with Paul Waltzing, and we sort of hatched a plan that would see me take the boat to Antarctic for them and captain it and, wreak a bit of havoc against the Japanese whalers and stuff. And
Pete said that an agreement was reached with Sea Shepherd for the boat to adopt a support role, and he was subsequently employed by Sea Shepherd. The vessel had been the only one in the fleet fast enough to keep up with all vessels of the Japanese whaling fleet. Members of the Whale Wars production crew were on board all 3 Sea Shepherd vessels used in the campaign, filming for episodes of the Animal Planet show. Pete sold the Earthrace to a man named Eddie Gill, an Israeli entrepreneur and conservationist, who donated to buy the vessel. Eddie Gill then leased the ship to Sea Shepherd for $1 per year to use in pursuit of Japanese whalers in Antarctica. The idea was that the Earthrace would be fast enough to locate and intercept the Japanese fleet, delaying it long enough for the slower vessels Bob Barker and Steve Irwin to draw near and commence their more focused anti-whaling activities. On the 17th of October 2009, the Earthrace was presented to the media with a new black paint job and renamed the Eddie Gill. The boat was fitted with numerous upgrades for the harsh waters of Antarctica.
Was called Earthrace, now called the Eddie Gill. Come with me, my homies, and I'm going to show you why this boat is so special.
The hull was reinforced with multiple layers of Kevlar to protect against ice damage, with extra layers to the areas below and some above the waterline. The ship was painted with a special paint to supposedly scatter radar signals.
It's a very cool colour, this black, but it's not any old paint on here. It's got carbon flecks through it, and that diffracts radar. And the end result is this is now a stealth boat, and we can sneak up on the Japanese without them knowing that we're there. This baby here is a Sea-Doo RXT, the gruntiest jet ski ever made. 260 horsepower, 70 mile an hour. We're going to wreak some havoc in the Southern Ocean with this baby.
It was equipped with other electronic upgrades, including a loud set of speakers. Pete intended to use the speakers to blast songs at the whaling fleet.
Maybe the best thing we have though is this Fusion stereo system, just under 10,000 watts on the back deck here. You can have some pretty good parties with that much grunt, Now this is my Simrad broadband radar. The neat thing about this guy is that the military systems can't actually detect it, so it helps us sneaking up on those naughty Japanese. And this bad boy is my FLIR infrared night vision system, so you can see what your heat signature looks like if you really wanted to. The floor in here is actually made of hemp. Now you don't want to go smoking it, or you could actually, but you'd need a joint the size of a baseball bat to get anything decent out of it. These are our Corbo Revolution racing seats. Quite neat because they hug around you, which is good when you got C's smacking you on the side, but if you've got a fat ass, you ain't fitting in here. Carbon racing steering wheel. You can use it as a teabag holder if you want. Inside that box is a bunch of tactical gear, but I can't show you what's in there, otherwise I might as well show the Japanese. But they will get to see it when we're down in Antarctic.
Before embarking on their journey, the Sea Shepherd made it clear that the Eddie Gill would not be used as a confrontational vessel like their previous ship, the Steve Irwin. However, as the journey progressed, the president of Sea Shepherd, Paul Waltzing, changed his stance. In October of 2009, he declared that with the Eddie Gill's top speed of roughly 40 knots, it would be used to intercept whaling ships and obstruct their ability to harpoon whales. A variety of methods were employed in their efforts, including firing a homemade potato cannon, throwing rotten butter, laser pointing, and a controversial bow and arrow to fire into and poison the whale meat.
I've got a hunting bow and arrow. I'm going to put a nasty chemical on the end of those arrows and shoot them into a dead whale. It'll make them not want to take that whale into the processing ship.
After sailing to Hobart, Australia, and preparing there for the anti-whaling operations, the Eddie Gill and crew of 6 were cleared by customs and set sail to Antarctica on the 12th of December 2009. The crew was anticipated to spend around 3 months trying to disrupt the Japanese whaling fleet in support of other Sea Shepherd vessels protesting off the coast. After around 11 days at sea, the Eddie Gill and her crew arrived in Antarctica.
The reason for the spud gun was the previous year, the Japanese had these big nets up the side of their boat, and it's very difficult. You're going along in a bouncing boat, and you're trying to throw these bottles of either rotten butter, or what I decided to do was to shoot paint on the side of the Nishimaru or the harpoon vessels, and shoot red paint symbolising blood. And there again, I talked before about media hooks. The photos of the Nishimaru coming into port with that red paint all over it, those photos went all over the globe.
Shortly after arriving in Antarctica, the Sea Shepherd and the Eddie Gill ramped up their various methods of protest. Taunting the whaling vessels, the Eddie Gill crew had been pointing lasers. Shooting potato launchers and throwing prop foulers, essentially a woven rope to try and tangle the propellers.
And then most of our time in Antarctica, our job was we could keep up with all of the vessels, so the security vessel and the harpoon vessel, so we chased them around for various periods of time.
On January the 5th, 2010, the Eddie Gill crew had located the Japanese whaling fleet and followed them overnight.
We got involved a little bit in what's called prop fouling. We did manage to stop the Nishimaru, and this was on January the 6th. So the Nishimaru is a processing ship, and one of the ways to try and so we were going to have to wait to be refueled. We had another boat, the Bob Barker, and the captain of that had told me, if you can slow it down for an hour, I can catch the boat and then I can follow it and stop them from transferring whales to the slipway. So if he was correct in that, it would have stopped the whaling as long as that boat could remain on the stern or near the slipway of the boat. So we went out and we'd built some different cables and ropes with buoys and all sorts of stuff. And we fed this thing, we zigzagged in front of the Nishimaru and managed to get one of these things to slide down and get engaged in the propeller. And the ship did stop, and it stopped long enough for the Bob Barker to catch up to it. But then, of course, what happened was, the Yushin Maru number 1, 2, and 3 came past us. So those are the 3 harpoon vessels, and then the Shonan Maru, which is their security vessel, that boat came past, and then as they were sort of passing us, they turned to starboard over 3 waves. And
the following day, on the 6th of January 2010, their objective was to obstruct the Japanese security vessel, the Shonan Maru number 2. Their efforts would end in disaster.
An extraordinary drama has been played out in the icy waters of the Antarctic between Japanese whalers and anti-whaling protesters. The Sea Shepherd group says one of its boats was destroyed in a violent clash at Commonwealth Bay, claiming the Japanese deliberately rammed the vessel to take it out of action.
A while ago I spoke to Paul Watson, the head of Sea Shepherd, on board his organisation's mothership in the Southern Ocean, and he told me that despite the latest incident, the group are not about to surrender.
The Japanese are getting increasingly more violent and more aggressive.
After colliding with the Shonan Maru, the bow of the Eddie Gill was sliced clean off.
I trust you've seen the footage a few times, the 6th of January.
Yeah.
What are your views on it?
From a maritime, you got to keep in mind that in some ways maritime law was sort of out the window there. Like once you start getting involved in prop fouling, you can't go crying because you know someone did something back to you. But I do think from a legal perspective, the Shonan Maru, however you look at it, they are initially the overtaking vessel. Their obligation is to keep well clear of us. Secondly, they're the portside vessel. So if you ignore the fact they're an overtaking vessel, they are also the portside vessel, which means they have to give way to us. We are the stand-on vessel. So under all maritime law, we have the right of way. I have an obligation. Even though I'm the stand-on vessel, I must do whatever it takes to avoid a collision, even if I am on the stand-on vessel. And so my guy driving, so it was Jason, Kiwi guy, who's my engineer in Antarctica. He looked out the window and he sees this boat coming up on his port side, and he turns to starboard and he accelerates. So he's doing his best to get away from this boat, but in the end, it's nowhere near enough. And in hindsight, it may have even exacerbated the problem. The Shonan Maru would have still hit us, but I suspect the damage wouldn't have been as severe, like it would have been closer to the bow. And in hindsight, probably I should have been driving. Like I left an engineer driving. We were back on the boat celebrating. I didn't expect that the Shonan Maru would come and get involved like that. But they did, and in many ways it was, I probably got a couple of regrets from Antarctica, and one of them was that I left my engineer driving when there was still a close encounter situation on the cards.
In the chaos, Sea Shepherd vessel Steve Irwin was dispatched to rescue the crew from the Eddie Gill. No serious injuries were sustained, besides one crew member suffering 2 broken ribs.
Yeah, so the next day, my crew transferred on that. We transferred out what we could recover out of the boat, and then so then the case became, what are we going to do now?
A plan was then hatched to tow the remains of the Eddie Gill to De Monteville Station in Antarctica for its repair. It is not known for certain what exactly happened during its tow, but the Eddie Gill mysteriously sank under the cover of darkness the next day. Some, including Pete, state that Paul Watson ordered the scuttling of the boat for publicity purposes. Others claim that the boat had submitted to the damage caused while en route to the station.
Environmental activist says that after his protest boat was damaged in a collision with a Japanese whaling vessel, the leader of the anti-whaling group Sea Shepherd ordered him to scuttle the craft in order to raise public sympathy. Peter Bethune's high-speed boat, the Eddie Gill, collided with a Japanese research whaler in the Antarctic Ocean in January. The Sea Shepherd Conservation Group insisted that the boat sank due to damage caused by the collision. On Thursday, Bethune spoke to Radio New Zealand and said that Sea Shepherd founder Paul Watson ordered the ship's sinking to garner public sympathy.
Now, and the French base had offered, they had a big research vessel that could, with a crane big enough to lift the Earthrace onto that research vessel, and they were going back to Hobart, I believe, after they'd finished. So the initial plan was we were going to take the boat to the French base. And then I got a call from, or in fact, I never took the call from Paul. It was via the captain of the Barbarka and their comms officer. And basically they're saying, Paul wants the boat scuttled, but it needs to be done such it looks like we've done our best to save the vessel. And, you know, I mentioned before the regrets I have in Antarctica. One was leaving my engineer driving the boat, and the second was that I ever went along with us. Like, it was extremely dishonest. And, you know, Paul had said, you know, he wanted the boat to sink in 6 or 8 hours. I think it took 6 hours before the tow rope finally broke. So there was myself. So there's only 4 people privy to this that I know of at that stage. There was Paul Watson, Chuck Swift, the captain of the Bob Barker, the comms officer, whose name was Luke, I think, and myself. So the 3 of us, without Paul Watson's on a different boat. The 3 of us go into the Addy Gill. I sit there, I open up the Seacocks, I start looking at the volume of flow rate to calculate how much do I need to have this boat so the engine room is submerged in 8 hours. So eventually I figured it out, but I'm in tears doing this. Like, this boat has been my life for, you know, 4 years and 3 years, and the build and funding it and everything. And I put my life and soul into this. And so it is breaking my heart, but I was loyal to Sea Shepherd and loyal to Paul Watson. And I believe that they had the best interests of trying to save whales at heart. And so, you know, that was the reason I went along with it, even if I regret it now.
The former captain of the Bob Barker, Chuck Swift, resigned from Sea Shepherd after the sinking of the Addy Gill. Although he signed a confidentiality agreement before leaving Sea Shepherd, Chuck stated that neither Sea Shepherd nor Pete Bethune were being completely honest about what happened.
You know, now you've got this boat that's abandoned in Antarctica. And after that, it was 2 or 3 days later, I told my crew what had happened. But I said to them, look, I don't want you telling the rest of the crew on Sea Shepherd, but this is what happened.
Yeah, what was their reaction?
Sort of, you know, starting to regret it. Oh, yeah, pissed off. Like, you know, that boat was, you know, they'd all spent a chunk of their lives on that boat now. And I think we all realised the dishonesty of it. You know, that I just went and sat in my room and sulked and, you know, figured, you know, what do I do now? And then, you know, that was when I came up with the idea after that was, you know, let's go and board one of these boats. So I still was determined to contribute to trying to stop whaling, even though I didn't have a boat anymore.
After the incident, Pete returned to Australia. While over in Perth, he thought through numerous ways on how to board the Shonan Maru and confront the captain and crew for the loss of his ship. After heading back to Antarctica and locating the whaling fleet once again, Pete saw his opportunity on the 15th of February 2010. His ambitious plan was to board the ship, present the captain with a bill for $3 million for the damage to the Addy Gill, conduct a citizen's arrest on the captain of the Shonan Maru for attempted murder, and bring him and the crew to New Zealand or Australia for trial.
The boat goes back to Perth. We refueled. I go and buy a whole lot of red paint. Went and got myself another bow and arrow because they'd thrown off my bow and arrow. That's a different story altogether. But got a bow and arrow. Paul wanted a new fridge. He's got. So Paul, he says he's vegan, right? And in his fridge he's got salmon and chocolate and dairy and stuff like that. But his fridge wasn't big enough. So me and his PA at the time, we had to go and buy him a new fridge. So we got his fridge, and then I went and bought my bow and arrow. And then we got back on the Steve Irwin, and for the rest of the campaign I was on the Steve Irwin until I managed to board the Shonan Maru. I've tried maybe 8 times to try and get aboard the Shonan Maru, and they is well defended. They've got nets, they've got big pepper spray guns. They call them an impulse gun, but you can cover a tennis court with pepper spray with these things. They've got water cannons. And in the day, they are onto you straight away. But I remember thinking at night, you know, if we get a dark night, we can sneak up there without them knowing. We spent about a week researching it, getting photos of the Shonan Maru to see if there's any weak spots. And they've got these anti-boarding spikes down the side of the boat. And so these boats, they roll a lot. So you've got these spikes going up and down like this in the swell, whereas we're in this little wee boat bouncing along, in this case a jet ski. So the spikes are a big impediment to you being able to get close. There was one spike missing right on the stern. And as we come in close, Larry puts us between these 2 spikes, and I clamber up on the side. it was quite hard getting up. And so I get up, and then what's happening is the boat is swelling. As the boat rolls, I'm clambering on the side. The boat rolls up like this, and then as it comes down, the water comes over my feet up to maybe nearly my waist, and it sweeps me off. And so I collapse back in the water, and it's cold, and suddenly it goes quiet, and the Sonar Mare I see disappearing off in the distance. There was big swell, like there was a couple meters of swell. Probably 2 or 3 attempts of me before I'll be too exhausted to be able to do it, because I knew it was hard to climb up the side of this boat. Like you're kind of doing a muscle up. It's not easy doing a muscle up with all that stuff. So anyway, I get on the side, I clamber up, and I can feel this water. I'm like, no, I'm about to go in. And then when it comes up a second time, I remember just pulled the knife out from my leg, cut the net, and jumped inside. And I remember, and I sat down, and I knew I'd created history. It was a very special moment. So I'm up there thinking I better get my radio call done. So I get on the radio, the Kiwi has landed. And then I went and I hid for about 10 minutes waiting for crew to come out, and no one come out. And then I went and started sneaking around the boat, found a place on the top deck where I could hide for a bit.
After successfully climbing aboard, Pete hid on deck for around 3 hours.
And then after daybreak, and so I had the occasional radio back to the crew of the Steve Irwin and Bob Barker. Anyways, but I'd made a couple calls, and then they let me know. They said, oh, the chopper's on its way. And then about 10 minutes later, the chopper came. And so they were filming when I went in.
Actual footage from an Animal Planet helicopter of the confrontation shows the captain waving his hand at Pete, telling him to go away, before stomping on his bill of $3 million US. Pete had radioed in the helicopter out of fear of being thrown overboard by the Japanese crew.
So I went and held up this page I had. So I had these papers in a dry bag. I hold up a letter that's the demand letter saying that I'm demanding that the captain of the Sonar Mare comes with me back to the Steve Irwin, where I'm arresting him for the illegal sinking of my boat. And failing that, there was the invoice. I'm charging him $3 million to replace the boat that he's run over. So I go and I hold this up against the glass, and he goes back inside, and he just left the door slightly ajar, and he's just going to close it, and I snuck in behind him because I was cold. By now I was freezing. I fell in the water, got wet, been upstairs for maybe 3 or 4 hours by now, and I'm getting pretty cold. So I slotted inside. Inside was nice and warm. And there was a Japanese speaker on the Steve Irwin. They radioed them and so basically they repeat what is in the letter and repeat that I'm demanding that the captain come back with me because he's under arrest by me. and I'm charging him $3 million for the replacement of the boat that he's run over. And let's say it was a little bit hostile. They didn't do anything. And in fact, they left me there for, it was about 50 minutes before they finally searched me to see whether, has he got any knives or weapons on him or whatever. And then, after that, they took me down and, they gave me a room.
Unfortunately, it did not exactly go to plan. Pete was detained by the crew and taken back to Japan. He told me that the multi-week voyage back to Japan was rather awkward. On the 12th of March 2010, Pete was arrested by the Japanese Coast Guard and detained at a maximum security facility while awaiting trial.
And then they transferred me to the Tokyo Detention Center. And then it started to get a little bit dark. Like, that is not an easy prison. In fact, they put me in the highest security ward in the country. And there was a lot of very dangerous men in there. And in my time in Japan, I don't have a problem with it. The guards were very nice to me, or respectful, I'd say is probably a better word. I never got ill-treated by anyone. The Japanese are very respectful people, and I don't have a problem with the Japanese. They are nice people. I have a problem with their whaling, and that's more a government issue.
On the 2nd of April 2010, Pete was indicted on 5 charges: trespassing, assault, illegal possession of a knife, destruction of property, and obstruction of business. If convicted on all counts, he faced a maximum of 15 years behind bars. The assault charge was based on the allegation that he launched a bottle of butyric acid onto the Sonar Mare 2 days before the boarding, apparently causing chemical burns to a whaler's face. Pete and the Sea Shepherd claimed the burns were self-inflicted.
When do you think you're going to leave here? And I said, after 21 days, because you guys have nothing on me other than, I boarded a boat without permission. And he says, you are going to do prison time here. You are going to do serious prison time. And he said, we're going to charge you with all 5 offences.
By being brought to Japan, Pete stated that he hoped it would increase public awareness of Japanese whaling, while Japan's Institute of Cetacean Research issued a statement calling it a publicity stunt.
A series of those sabotage taken by the Sea Shepherd were very dangerous acts, which would risk the life and safety of the Japanese crew members.
On the 4th of June 2010, Sea Shepherd announced that it was no longer going to be formally associated with Pete, since a set of bow and arrows were on the Eddie Gill during the anti-whaling operation, referencing arrows found in the water near the Shonan Maru. However, Pete previously stated to Animal Planet cameras during Whale Wars filming that he intended to use the bow and arrows to spoil whale meat for commercial use. A 2010 report by Maritime New Zealand, as well as an Australian maritime report, put the blame for the collision on both the Shonan Maru No. 2 and the Eddie Gill. Japan refused to cooperate with the investigations. However, no charges were laid on either party.
It was a high seas dispute where one ship ended up in pieces. The skippers of a Japanese whaling ship and a protest boat blamed each other for the violent collision in the Southern Ocean earlier this year. But a New Zealand inquiry has found that they were both equally responsible. From New Zealand, ABC correspondent Dominique Schwartz reports.
It was a bitter confrontation that ended badly. Both captains blamed each other for the collision in January, but Maritime New Zealand says each was at fault.
This report reflects a black mark against the masters of both vessels.
It says the whaling ship had an obligation to avoid the New Zealand-registered Eddie Gill, but that when it didn't, the protest boat should have taken substantial evasive action.
Having those sort of activities taking place in the Antarctica is downright dangerous.
A bitter online feud has erupted between the anti-whaling organisation Sea Shepherd and the New Zealand skipper whose protest boat was rammed by a Japanese whaling ship. Pete Bethune has blasted Sea Shepherd and its leader Paul Watson, describing them as dishonest and morally bankrupt. Juliet Speedy reports.
Pete Bethune resigned from the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society in an open letter on his Facebook page today. He says he can no longer represent a group that deliberately misleads and lies.
It's gradually dawned on me how bad they are. Just every sort of month there's another big lie floating around.
Bethune now says he was directed by Sea Shepherd Admiral Paul Watson to deliberately sink the Eddie Gill after it was hit by the Japanese ship.
And it was done for PR purposes. And after the sinking, I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone about it. I wasn't even allowed to visit Eddie Gill. This is Eddie Gill's boat. I've sunk it and I've got to keep it a secret from him.
Sea Shepherd expelled Bethune during his trial in Japan, but later retracted their comments saying they had done so to help his case. Bethune says that too is lies.
And it didn't assist my trial at all. The lawyer said that it portrayed me as dishonest.
Bethune says senior Sea Shepherd personnel routinely lie and conspire over serious matters, and his resignation letter points out many of these.
Owner of the boat, Eddie Gill, was furious about the loss of his vessel. So, based largely on testimony from Pete and former captain of the Sea Shepherd boat, Bob Barker, Eddie Gill sued Sea Shepherd.
Eddie Gill bought the boat for $1 million. Paul Watson or Sea Shepherd was to give me $500,000. They refused to pay it. And so I ended up taking them to court. Eventually they had to pay me plus some interest. Then Eddie Gill sued them for the loss of the Eddie Gill. And so in this I gave some evidence. I think I met with his lawyers. He might have gotten the full $1 million off them. I think he won his case, and I can't remember how much he got, whether it was the full $1 million that he asked for or whatever. But yeah, so my relationship with Eddie Gill, it's been a while since I've seen him. Yeah, Eddie's a good bloke, and he does a lot for wildlife.
Pete continues to work in conservation. He set up his own organisation named Earthrace in 2011 and is currently assisting government agencies dealing with illegal fishing, wildlife poaching, and other environmental crimes around the world.
Good,
All right, mate.
Enjoy your Friday. Thanks very much. for
Travel
talking
safe,
to me.
mate. Yeah, all good, bro.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
See you, Pete.
Thanks so much for watching. A ton of work went into the making of this, so if you'd like to see more, then please consider subscribing. Until next time.